Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simon. I am the Senior Manager in charge of Cybersecurity Solution and Network in HKBN JOS, one of the larger SI in Malaysia and the region. I have been around in this industry for 31 years, and before I joined JOS, I was in the what you call attached with Kapasky International as head of the enterprise solution sales for Southeast Asia. So now I'm attached with JOS, propagating safety to all my clients. Now, without much ado, let me go through the agenda for today. Firstly, I will share with you the cybersecurity threat landscape. All right, and then I will explain to you the landscape and then give you some idea what are the different type of cyber attacks. All right. Let's see what else. Okay, then after that, I will share with you some tips on the do and don'ts for those who work in the office, remote working, and so on. Then I will explain to you some of the statistics in cybersecurity, and then my colleague, Mr. Yo, will share with you what are the typical cybersecurity challenges in the education segment. And then we will narrow down to specifically for school, what is a typical IT setup and what are the potential weaknesses you should look at and address too. Then we will share you specifically case studies that relate to education in Malaysia. All right. And having all said that, we also want to share with you what is the best practices to safeguard yourself in terms of cybersecurity safety. All right. And then lastly, we will recommend what is a typical topology design for schools so that you are aware what are the key elements you must have inside when you design the so-called network or IT blueprint for your school. All right. So next, okay, before I start, I want to share with you some statistics. These statistics was not produced by me, but rather it was on a report from Stealth Lab that was produced in January this year. So this was especially meant for statistics for the region. Is a mixture of Southeast Asia and APAC. But generally, they apply the same. It won't run far. So first fact is that 30% of education users are victim of phishing. Phishing is like email phishing. I will go through later what is phishing. And then this data loss will stand at, for this region, is around 21.2 million ringgit. Okay. And when it comes to cyber preparedness, the education segment will rank last at the bottom to prepare for any eventual of cyber attacks. So that is why the education need to really improve on this ranking by securing themselves against potential cyber attacks. On average, in the black market or dark web, the academic record costs about 1,139 ringgit that can be sold. So that is quite lucrative. The other thing is that 87% of education institute will at least experience one cyber attack by now. Okay, if not more, some are even more. Okay, and then the other thing is the statistic is that we find that 85% of the universities are very public or private. They have requested the management for adequate cybersecurity budget to fund the cybersecurity protection for the infra. Okay, and then we also notice that schools are the most lucrative target for ransomware. Why? Because school have least protection. Okay, so next is I want to share with you the most potent malware is called ransomware. Basically, this malware will come in to lock or encrypt your data and demand for a ransom. Until the ransom is paid, then only they will give you a key to unlock or to decrypt your data they have locked. So this is what you call, they make a business out of this. Later, I will show you why this ransomware is more potent, because you can run them as a service. Okay, some statistics on ransomware. The largest ransomware demanded was USD 70 million, about 294 million ringgit. It is by the ransomware by the node of Rayville, and the customer called Kaseya is in the US. And the highest ransomware ever paid was USD 40 million, about 186 million ringgit, paid by an insurance company in December last year. They had no choice. All their customer data was locked. If you don't pay, you will lose your data information, or worse still, the attacker will publish your customer info on the World Wide Web. That will be a more serious issue. And how fast or how long does it take for a ransomware to encrypt your file? Even before I finish the word, say Ohayo gozaimasu. 3 seconds, very fast. And lastly, I want you all to think about it. Can ransomware infect your mobile phone? All right, towards the end, please give me your answer during Q&A. I will answer you. Think about it. Next, the last 2 years, the world have had to endure a pandemic called COVID-19. Despite the fact that the world is facing this pandemic, the cyber criminal took full advantage of this pandemic to come up with various mechanisms to cheat people, to get people hooked in, in terms of ransomware, malware, all those things. What they do is that they mimic the World Health Organization or Center for Disease Control, CDC, or even the Ministry of Health by publishing certain websites as if they're giving you information on COVID-19. But when the person click on it, they download the malware into their laptop or PC. That is how they get infected. So this is very common for the last 2 years since the COVID-19 started in January 2020. So do be alert when you go into this kind of website. Check their what you call their cert, the website cert, okay, so that you are aware whether they are legitimate or not. All right. And then of course during this pandemic, what it does is that there's a lot of fake websites that come into as if they're offering financial help or government stimulus package for the businesses, for the individual. All right, and if people go in and start to fill form and give your banking detail or your personal detail, they will capture all that. So be very careful on this kind of so-called scam. We have a lot of scams now. It is so unsafe in this world nowadays. So even simple thing like offering free masks, then they ask you to fill form all your personal detail inside. Those are some of the example of what you call COVID-19 related phishing teams. Okay. So let me go to the next one. Okay, this one, I want to bring it up is, most people think that cyber criminal are a silo or lone attack. It is different. These cyber criminals are cyber organized crime. They are so organized, even more organized than MLM. If you look at it, they have their threat actor. These are the people who do the reconnaissance to identify the victims. Then they have the so-called developer. They have the people who infect, they do the so-called infection to potential victims. So you look at it, they are so organized until it is run as a business. So it is a very profitable business when it comes to this. That's why the cyber criminal organizations are very, very sophisticated nowadays. As technology become more advanced, cyber criminal also will use back a similar technology to become more advanced to attack their victims. All right, let me go to the next. Okay, this is the different type of cyber attacks. I took out some of these. They are the key ones. I start from my left. Definitely malware. What are the deadly malware? On the first one, I have put in is like Petya. Petya is ransomware, all right? And then crypto locker, anything with the locker name, it is a form of ransomware. Then there is a non-PETYA. Non-PETYA is to mimic the DNA of PETYA, but non-PETYA is not a ransomware. It is what I call a destroyer. It was created to kill off certain political agenda. But unfortunately, when this kind of malware, you hit certain country, it does not contain there because the world is connected to the internet. So the spread of this malware is so disastrous. One of the world's largest shipping company called Maersk, M-A-E-R-S-K, it affected their network was down for 2 weeks. 300 million USD was lost in this 2-week period because the ship cannot be moved, communicated to move. Then of course, I think the other famous ransomware will be WannaCry. I think a lot of people have heard of before. This WannaCry is very deadly because it was developed using a hacking tool, state-of-the-art hacking tool called Eternal Blue. All right, so Eternal Blue was developed by state-sponsored agencies. That's why it is so potent. And then the last one that I purposely brought up is Stuxnet. Stuxnet is the world's first cyber nuclear malware that was targeted at certain country to down their cooling system of a nuclear reactor. All right. Now, next is phishing. Phishing is exactly like in the Malay word called pancing ikan, fishing lah. So basically, you have a rod, you have a line, and then you have a hook. At the end of the hook, you have a bait. This is to bait people to take in, to click on the attachment so that they can infect the PC or the laptop with the malware. Okay. And the next is drive-by download. Okay, drive-by download is a new generation kind of thing where if you move your mouse and cursor past this icon, you don't even have to click on it. You just move by. It will trigger the download. So this is called drive-by download. Very advanced form of a cyber attack. Then the fourth one, man-in-the-middle attack. What is meant by man-in-the-middle attack? For example, if I, Simon, I send an email to you. If my email is not encrypted, someone in the middle can anticipate my email and infect it with attachment. Okay, and then continue his journey to Mr. Yo. If my email is not encrypted, and when Yo saw it, it's from Simon, so it's legit, and double click on the attachment, then the attachment will launch its malware. This is what we call man-in-the-middle attack. To overcome this kind of man-in-the-middle attack, what we do is that our email, when we set up, we encrypt it so that it protects the content from modification. All right. Next. Okay, password attack. This is called brute force. That means what it does is that some people password is weak. It can be, if you can be, test and test and test until you brute force it to break. Later, I will share with you some of the tips how to secure or come up with a strong password so that, you need to safeguard yourself. Don't use common password like password 123. If you Google the top 100 password that commonly used, that can be easily what you call break. They will list down all these things. If you follow that, sure kena one. All right. Okay, the next one, DDoS, distributed denial of service attack. This one is very common where the cyber criminal wants to create your business website or your website to crash. Okay, how they do that? They can use IoT, Internet of Things devices. What is IoT devices? The concept of a smart home where you have your heater, your rice cooker, your oven, your aircon, everything connected to the internet and controlled by the phone. And these devices, they have minimum or hardly any protection. So they can be easily compromised. Cyber criminal can command these devices to attack your website. This is what is meant a form of distributed denial of service attack, DDoS in short. Okay, the last one is malvertising. This is the last 1.5 years kind of thing whereby they advertise, advertisement, when you click on it, there's a malware behind, so to say. All right, next. Okay, this is, I give you an example of specific email team attacks. If you look at it, let's say if I send an email to you, how do you know that this email is legitimate from Simon? Okay, suppose let's say my email is simon.wong@dongzong.net.my. Okay, then this DNS thing that you look at is legitimate. But if let's say my email comes with simon.wong@dongzong.net.pz.my, most people will think nothing about it. But if you look at it, there is a .pz. So that means they are trying to mimic my legitimate email by creating a fake one. So be very careful to look at the domain name of the email address. This is to safeguard yourself because we come across many incidents like this as a form of email phishing attack. All right, so do check on this okay. Okay, now the reason why I want to share with you this process. This is a typical process of cyber criminal users to launch an email phishing attack. First thing they do is they have a team to do reconnaissance or recce, where they will identify potential victims to be attacked. Then they will carve out the delivery method to infect the person or the organization. Once they're done that, they can come in and exploit you. Then they will exploit whatever this ID can bring them to. I mean, they can bring them as like into the network to go, for example, like organization. If you are in the bank, of course, they want to take out the customer banking detail or the credit card information. If they are in so-called schools, so what they do is that they take out all the student data, because this data can be sold in the dark web for money. All right. Then what they do is, next step is that after they have done their job, they will send a notice to their CNC. CNC is the command and control. That is the mothership, saying down there, okay, I have done my job. Then the CNC, the mothership will tell them, okay, send the detail out, and then they will exit. But when they exit, they take away the data. They also leave behind a backdoor for them to come back in the future. Once they attack you, they will always have this thing. They left a backdoor to come in again. So that is very important when we want to clearly sanitize infra or network attack. We make sure even the backdoor is already closed. Don't let them come back. Okay. Next. Okay, this is my favorite guy. Mr. Mueller here is a former FBI director. He made a very famous statement. There are only two types of company: those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. So the statement shows that nobody is really safe. Okay, the golden triangle. In most of the organization, there will be three elements that is critical to the organization. The first is the people, the second is the process, the third is the technology. Among these three, the weakest link is the people, because people tend to have weaknesses. We can, like, if you read your email late at night, you're tired, you're easily being targeted. Okay, that is for this reason we wanted to create cybersecurity awareness for those who are in the non-IT, the so-called layman people, so that they know at least the minimum on how to safeguard themselves from potential cyber attack. All right. And lastly is that this is my own personal experience. Don't check your email late at night, especially when you're tired, because at night when we're tired, we let our guard down. So we may not be alert, especially to those phishing emails. Next. Okay, this is a typical do and don'ts. Pay attention. I will start with the right side, the X, the red color one. Okay. Now, a lot of people ask me, Simon, why can't I use the free Wi-Fi at Starbucks, Coffee Bean, Kopitiam, all the public places? My advice is, Don't use their free Wi-Fi to do your banking transaction or anything that is sensitive, requiring log-on ID, the single sign-on, your password at the public Wi-Fi, for a simple reason. If I'm the operator of the public Wi-Fi, most of the time I would invest minimum security feature into securing the Wi-Fi. That is the reason why you shouldn't use free public Wi-Fi, because the security there is minimum, right? And the other thing is that, you know, even in your own office, don't leave sensitive information around. If your PC or laptop is on and it's 12:30, you want to go for lunch break, don't leave it open. What you do is Control, Alternate, Delete, lock your PC or laptop. Why? So nobody can come into contact or misuse or abuse your laptop. Can you imagine if your laptop is open, I go in, I send out a nasty email out, you know, and go and so-called accuse someone of all the naughty things, then how are you going to, you know, clean yourself up? Because it's come from the email. So the best effort is prevention is better than cure. So Control, Alternate, Delete, lock your laptop before you go for lunch. Even if you go so simple thing like go to the toilet, this is to be on the safeguard side, all right? And then thirdly is that do not post your private details on social media. We have a lot of people love to go and tell what card they have. You know, someone they show their credit card, the what card, and then this thing and that thing. From those kind of photo, if I'm a cyber attacker, I can take, zoom down, even your simple thing like your card numbers. So those kind of things that you have to be very, very careful, all right? Third is that if you think the link is not safe, don't click on it. Don't ask for trouble. Just avoid only. And then go to those websites you can trust. All right. And of course, lastly, I think is same as the second one. Don't leave your phone or your laptop unattended. You know why? Because this personally happened to me. I left my handphone unattended. It was open. One of my friends sent one of the picture to him. Then later I found out, it's so unsecure. So that is why I learned from my experience, do not leave your personal devices unattended, especially your handphone. Okay? So now I go to the left side. What are the do? First thing is that when you want to do your banking detail, please use it from a secure Wi-Fi, either your office or your home Wi-Fi. Okay, and your home Wi-Fi, you know, if you're using your laptop, invest in a VPN, virtual private network. At least that will secure the tunneling when you go to the internet. Nobody can hack in, all right? And the second one, I think is most important that I talked about earlier. How do you create a strong password? Okay, first thing is that 4 elements must have. First thing is capital letter, small letter, numbers, and the unique character, either on a $sign, #, whatever. Last time I used to tell people minimum 10 characters. Now I would not even tell you minimum 10 characters, as long as possible. Okay, because why? Sometimes 10 also not enough. Because as technology evolve, they will have hacking tools that are able to break the code. So the longer the better in terms of strong password. But you must incorporate the 4 elements. Capital letter, small letter, numbers, and unique characters. All right? Or you can use passphrase. It's a phrase as your password. In this case, I created this thing like my MIL. MIL is stand for my mother-in-law birthday is on 12 November. Okay? So the fact is that most people would not remember their mother-in-law's birthday. But if you put it as a phrase long enough, then it's difficult. If you look at my sample that I give, my mother-in-law birthday is on 12 November and then got the double exclamation. So it incorporate the 4 elements, capital letter, small letter, numbers, and unique character. All right? And then the next one, you do pay attention to phishing traps, like what I say, the email, check the email, and all those attachments. If you are in doubt, you know, run an antivirus check before you click on it. All right. And when you want to eliminate info, please do it properly and completely. Now, this one, let me share with you. Most of us buy things from Shopee, Lazada. Am I correct? So when they send the parcel to you, they will have your name, address, and phone number. Those are your personal data. So what you do is you cut open this piece of docket that has your name, address, and phone number. You take it out, you cut it, shred it into pieces, or you do like me. What I do is I take a thick marker, I blanco it, I put makeup to the delivery note until nobody can read. Why? Because I want to protect my personal info, my name, my address, my unit number, and my phone number. Because cyber criminal can take full advantage of all these personal data to plan an attack against you. Simple as that, and that's done before. So that is why I put it as a make sure be careful on when you destroy your data. And the last one, when you are in the cyber cafe, please be aware of your surrounding. There will be crazy people who pretend like they are talking to a phone and then they move the phone down around. And then when you see someone, they see someone, a lady there is trying to key into his banking detail. What they do is they zoom into her keystroke. They will capture the keystroke has potential access to their password. So be very careful. I have seen it done before. So be well aware of your surrounding. All right. Now next, okay, I think I will run. Cybersecurity challenges in education. Can I do this? Okay, I will run quickly for you. Is the typical cybersecurity challenges in education. In education, what they do is that, as like in business also, they have lack of cybersecurity knowledge, the trained IT personnel, and of course, insufficient budget to protect themselves. All right. So these are typical challenges. And then when they bring their own device, you need to secure the BYOD device. If not, we do not know whether the BYOD device they bring in will contain malicious file that can potentially infect the school network or not. So we have to be mindful. Next, most schools or even university colleges, they have lack of a proper IT policy and governance practices. So this one is of priority. The first thing you should do is to have a policy in place, all right? So that everyone can follow what needs to be done. Lastly, there's a lot of malware, ransomware threat for the education sector. Okay, next I'm going to introduce Mr. Yo, who is my co-presenter. He will share with you specific case study in education. Mr. Yo, ready?
Thank you, Simon. So I'm Yo, I'm the technical lead for JAWS. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to share a little bit of the technical sides about what is good practices and what to do for education industry. Okay, let me continue. Okay, so this is the typical setup for school. So we actually come across, there are many cases that this how the school setup is. So what we learn is in the usual setup, we're going to have one network where the Wi-Fi devices from BYOD and mobile devices, which is a laptop from the school, they actually connect to the same Wi-Fi. Then they have a back office PC plus a server that connect to the LAN. So we see this is usually the setup in most of the schools that we come across. So what are the weaknesses if you have this type of setup? So first thing we know, they are likely to have a configuration weaknesses. When you have set up like this, for example, in this case, you have web server. The web server actually have a configuration weaknesses. We're going to share with you about a sample or case study that we just recently come across. Okay, so they also have weaknesses in terms of the setup that in the firewall. So next is just because this is a plain flat network, so the BYOD devices like a mobile phone that we bring to school, the malware that coming through the mobile phone actually can come into the school and go straight inside the PC, laptop, and the server. And in some of the case we come across that we have this administrator, they share username and password to make the situation worse. Sometimes the password, in order for them to remember it easily, the password is actually is P alias SFW0RD. With all these things that are combined together, it's likely we're going to have this data leak, data loss, or ransomware case happen to school because of these poor practices. Okay, in some of the setup, we notice there are school actually still hosting their own email server without much protection. So it's very easy that the email come in, the spam phishing email that come in through the school system and accessed by the user, and the malware got spread inside the network. Again, the last one, the endpoint protection that allow the Trojan that to spread with a weak protection that have weak software protection to the endpoint devices, that including the laptop, PC, and the server. So what can a hacker do after they see what you actually running in the school? So we actually provide some of the example. So if you, on a scenario number one, if you're running with a weak, if you have a weakness on the email protection, so the 3 steps that the hacker can do, the hacker can actually send you a phishing email with the malware attachment. The user without doubt will actually 100% will click the malware link, and the PC will get infected, the school system got compromised, a ransomware will happen. On the second scenario, if there's a weakness in the firewall configuration, the hacker can actually attack the firewall and enter to the system. Example, just now we see the e-class portal, RDP, and the firewall that actually connected to internet. So hacker enter to the school system, steal the data, install ransomware, and ask for ransomware payment. Okay, next case. What if you have a weakness on the endpoint protection, which is the laptop, PC, server protection? So very easy. The user will actually bring the USB from home because they want to transfer file between office, from office PC to home laptop. So usually they're going to bring the malware that in the USB actually come into school, and the malware got installed into the school system and spread into the teacher and actually student. And that also spread the ransomware among school and student PC. So the fourth scenario, what if you have a weak security practices, like just how my colleague Simon was mentioned, if you have a weak user ID or password, and sometimes people actually share user ID and password for the user login. So it's very easy for them to actually hack into the school system so that they can actually start to download data for all this information, that including teacher name, full IC, phone number, email address, and etc. So with this, right, we can actually start to do attempt logging into the bank system to steal money. For example, in this case, it's e-wallet. So this was actually happened in the real scenario. So that in this year, about February, it was reported by Sina Harian. In Kuala Lumpur, it was like 50 teachers from about 5 schools in Cranberry. So in one of the victim, Irene, she mentioned that her 3,000 ringgit was actually transferred out from e-wallet. So immediately she notified this, right? She transferred remaining 5,000 back to her account. So from here, we can actually do a wild guess, right? By knowing the phone number plus IC number, we can actually log into e-wallet. So this is currently a lot of practice to many of us. So we need to actually protect our information from here, how we're going to interpret this. Second is, please don't use your IC number as your PIN to secure e-wallet. This is very weak practice. Okay, so now we talk about the real thing. How do we prevent this to happen to us? So we actually wanted to share with you some of the cybersecurity practices. We actually classify them into 3 categories: easy, intermediate, and advanced. So we're going to start with easy, then we'll start with intermediate and advanced. So as we go up the ladder, right, so you'll become more and more difficult, but nonetheless, it should not stop you from actually start from easy first. Some of these slides will be a little bit of technical, or maybe it will be too much for you to remember in a short time period. Perhaps you can actually get this PowerPoint from Dong Zhong so that you can actually keep it for your future reference. Okay, so we're going to start with easy. From here, right, we're going to know that I'm going to classify them based on these implementation difficulty and cost to implement. So for easy, right, I classify them as 2 star as difficulty to implement, and the cost to implement is only 1 star. That means I usually do not need a lot of cost to implement this. Okay, first one, it's very easy for us to implement an IT policy and procedure so that we can ensure there's a good practice currently happening in the school, but it's important that we need to have a well communication to all the users that into the school. Okay, so you can actually use some of these just we're going to share today as to include in your IT policy. Once a year, we're going to do awareness to all the users to keep them reminded about all these good practices. Second, we should always regular patch update on our software, that including our operating system. Example, our Windows, our Microsoft Office, our Acrobat Reader, our iOS devices, or our Android phone. So this should be a good practice that we need to do it regularly, because we cannot deny software is actually written by all the programmer, and we cannot avoid there will be a hole or there will be a weakness that in the software. But it's good that there's always update into all this software to keep it always secure and updated. Okay, the next one. We should ensure our antivirus installed to all our endpoint, including our mobile devices, our PC, laptop, and server. Ensure the antivirus signature is always up to date. This is very easy. And the next one, to ensure only authorized software that we can actually run into the school system. So sometimes because some of the laptop or PC have local administrator password for the local user, users tend to install some of the tools they download externally for them to do their work. But sometimes the free tool out there, they download into the PC or laptop, also come with malware that may actually have a virus or malware infection into the school system. Okay, this is the current practice that we need to always remind ourselves. We should always disable macro when we see the file running on the office file. For example, Excel, PowerPoint, or document. When Microsoft Office prompt you this, do you want to run the macro? You should always say no, because it's very easy that the malware actually hide inside a document file for the user to execute. Okay, so this is very difficult to prevent if usual practice is just to click yes on when this prompt is coming up from the Office software. Okay, so we require all accounts with password login to have a strong unique password, and ensure there will be no share among the user ID. So this is very easy to implement, like just now Simon mentioned. We should always have three elements, which is capital and small capital number plus some of the symbol sign in our password combination. So minimum we have 12 characters so that you will take difficult for the hacker to guess your password. And the last one for easy is apply principle of least privileges to all systems and services so that only have access to what they need to perform their job. So what do I mean here is, if the user required to access to only one folder, then we only have access to that folder. If the user only need to access one server, then we only allow the user to access one server, so that you will not have too loose. We don't have too loose to control about all this user ID. Eventually, yeah, eventually you actually create a control on who can actually do what into the system. Okay, now we actually move into intermediate. So intermediate, the difficulty to implement is 3-star. The cost to implement is also 3-star. That means that it's a slightly upskill in what we need to do for intermediate. Okay, let me move on to the first one. So example, we need to implement anti-malware, anti-phishing into the email protection system. From what we learned that actually there's a lot of attack actually coming through email, and this is very easy to implement. So that we will need to have a strong protection into our email system so that we can actually minimize majority of the attack audit. Okay, the second point, we need to implement IPS, or we call it intrusion prevention system, or the URL filter that to prevent malware that in and out our network. So usually where are we implement this is through the firewall system. So you always choose a good firewall principle to implement this. So sometimes we have to understand that we need to make a balance between cost and the function. But it's actually worth to implement some of the reputable firewall solution that can actually help to protect in your system that on the both inbound and outbound security. Okay, the next one. Should always deploy multi-factor authentication to all the service that you expose to internet. Just now, as we mentioned, you actually have a firewall that go to internet. Sometimes you have SSL VPN that go to internet. Sometimes you have some of the school portal that go into internet. For those access actually direct to internet, right? You should always have this multi-factor authentication to protect your username and password. It's very easy for hacker to guess your username and password, but then with this additional of protection on the multi-factor, they also will need to compromise your mobile phone 2-in-1 in order for them to enter the school system. So what is next? On the fourth one, it's critical to maintain the backup offline so that in case in the worst case scenario, the server is taking ransom or taking offline, you are able to restore the service as quick as possible. So we actually recommend administrator to do a regular backup. At the same time, test the backup on the regular basis. And the fifth one, implement user cybersecurity awareness on the internal basis so that the user aware about all these changes and all these attack pattern that are coming to the market. So as we know from just now the sharing from my colleague Simon, attacker already work as an organized crime. They actually change the tactic quickly. That we should always update about the new way of currently the pattern that is attacking in the market. Okay, let's move on to the last one, advanced. So the difficulty to implement is 4-star, and the cost to implement also slightly higher, which is a 4-star also. So what's the first one? We should always deploy logical and physical network segmentation to separate out various school unit or department within the school network. I'm going to share with you what will be the good practice and a good design that when it come into design based on this logic in the later page. Second is we should always set up a centralized log management system to capture the information about what is currently happening. So in this example, in case there are some suspicious activity currently happening in school, right? We can always play back the log to find out what is happening for us to do log forensic. Okay, number 3. We should always do a yearly audit about what is currently happening to the firewall. So this allows us to check the current setting in the configuration. Are we still relevant? Is there any weakness that already known to the market that we can actually improve about it? And the last one, we should conduct a regular basis of the vulnerability scanning on those services that go into internet. So we actually know that there are many services from the school that have to go to internet, like the e-class or login or the attendance system. So this is actually impose risk to school. They are easily got hacked if you are not aware about the latest vulnerability. Okay, now we actually come into what will be the good design for school. We actually come up some of the design recommendation for you. So here is our design recommendation. So from here, right, we know that there will be a Wi-Fi that from BOD. From our recommendation that we should always separate Wi-Fi for guests for those actually bring their own device. Okay, then for those devices like the laptop that is actually part of the asset from the school, right? We antivirus install, we're going to separate them into the internet lab. So what happened to here is for those untrusted device, or we actually call it BOD, they cannot come into the internet network. For them to serve to internet, right? They will just through the firewall and go direct to internet. So we will have the good antivirus software to install among all the mobile device with the back office PC plus all the school system. So among the school system, how we're going to protect them, we're going to install a good backup system so that we're going to have offsite about the data that we store inside the school. Okay, then we will have an email protection system that are going to scan and actually filter out all these malware and phishing that come into the email server. So this can be internal email server or some of the cloud-hosted email server like Gmail. And the last one is the event monitoring that we're going to monitor the traffic that currently happen in the network. So in the event there are some suspicious activity, we can always play back the logs to monitor what is actually happened. We're able to identify the threat very easy and very pinpoint to the issue. So what are we addressing by changing to this type of design? first thing just now, these are the points just now I mentioned earlier. For the software vulnerability and configuration weakness, right? We're going to do a yearly firewall log audit service, and we need to do a vulnerability assessment for us to discover is there a weakness on the firewall plus all these servers that currently connected to internet. So in terms of the malware spread inside the network, we're going to do a network segmentation so that we're going to separate out the user LAN, Wi-Fi, BLOD, and the server LAN, so that when there's a malware currently spread inside the BLOD network or spread inside the back office network, right, they cannot go inside the server LAN. So this is already separate and protected by this firewall, so that you actually contain or control the situation within the school system. So how about shared user ID, password, and weak password practice? Okay, so we're going to do unique user ID and password with no share ID. So we're going to implement strong password with multi-factor authentication. So this will take away the risk about the user ID got compromised, and the hacker can actually use the already had user ID to enter the school system. So the next one, data leak, data loss, and ransomware. How do we protect it, right? So we're going to do a data encryption and user access control. We're going to control user can access which server, which folder by apply the least privilege control into the server and the folder basis. And we're going to do offline backup through the backup system. So in case there's a outage or hack in the web server, we can always use the offline backup system to restore the server. So how about the email phishing and the virus? So we're going to do it with anti-phishing, anti-malware email protection, like what we mentioned here into this piece. In terms of the endpoint Trojan and the malware, we're going to protect using the endpoint software patching, which is we should always ensure the software running inside the PC laptop server is always latest, and we should have a good anti-malware, antivirus protection. Okay, so all in all, right, we need to have the IT policy to mention all these points that we're going to do a governance about the good practice. At the same time, we should do a regular user awareness to keep reminding user about all these good practice is important to protect school system. So, okay, let's come to the last section about today. We actually have received some of the questions from school. So there are total 4 questions that we need to go through. Let me go through the first one. First one, when we hosted our school official website, the hosting platform, the WordPress in our case, keep notifying us about our school site content malware, while our technician couldn't detect the malware. So we actually help you to do a check about your case. We notice this is actually, we actually take our risk to access your portal. We notice it's a true case. Currently, your school has malware. We actually did a scan about your school system on the 11th, this few days ago. We would like to mention to you, most of the vendor out there is actually classify your school's portal is a malware. Why this thing is happening? Because you have some of the code running in the portal have this malicious activity to scan user registry file. So when user access your portal, the malicious code will actually go through the Internet Explorer to scan PC about what running version and what is the path that the browser is running. We usually don't do this if this is a legitimate website. So from here, we can confirm the website is already compromised. Okay, so what you need to do is need to report to developer to find out which code is actually doing this and remove the code from the web page. On question number 2, is the very generic question he asked about Facebook messaging phishing incident. So like just now, Simon mentioned, phishing is actually wanted to capture most of the user ID, password, and OTP in most of the case. So how they do this, right? By tricking user to click a link so that they will eventually enter username and password. So some of the good do's and don'ts that do extension from just now shared by Simon. We should always do this. We should only download the software from official site, like Play Store or Google Store or Apple Store. We should always keep the software and always to the latest version. We should always secure your device. In this case, is your mobile phone with a strong password, PIN, and biometric authentication. We should also consider to install reliable antivirus. Okay, So we should not install those APK file for unknown site. Usually the APK file come with malware. We should not use public Wi-Fi just now. We should avoid using public Wi-Fi just now. Sam also mentioned because this one have high risk. People can actually read your username and password. We should not share or OTP or pack that to anyone. We should not use outdated OS version like Windows 7, OS or Android version 9. Okay, we should not also do a jailbreak or root your device. The moment you root your device or jailbreak your device, right, that means the principal no longer able to protect you for installing any malicious software that to your phone. Okay, question number 3 is a bit long, so let me read out for you. So the victim actually purchased from Carousel that they actually wanted to buy an iPad. So the price was 1,200, but the seller actually contact the buyer through WhatsApp to say they're able to do the price deduction instead of 1,200 to 1,000. So, but the seller from Carousel is requesting instead of go through the Carousel payment system, the seller insists to actually go through direct payment. So the seller actually emailed the buyer to do a deposit for 500 ringgit. So he actually the seller described, because this is an internal TT to external bank, minimum the victim should deposit 1,500. So that is actually alerted the victims. So immediately say, he or she going to check with the bank. But eventually the victim decided this is a scam because the communication between the buyer and seller is through Gmail. So eventually the seller actually report this to Carousel and actually block the user. So this is actually very typical because the scammer will actually pretend to be the legitimate online seller to actually lure the victim to do a purchase of the item. So what is actually scammer want to do, right? The scammer actually want to offer the item at the lower price to attract the buyer. Okay, so that when the buyer actually complete the purchase, right, the seller will disappear. Eventually, the seller will never receive the goods. Okay, so we always say if too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. Okay, why? Okay, in some of the case, right, the seller also will make out the excuse the purchase item currently is actually stuck in the custom. So in order to release the item from the custom, right, the seller will need to pay extra money to the custom. Eventually, when the money already remitted, right, the item will never arrive. So we have seen there are so many cases like this way. So when you notice there are people actually treat you to do a payment in this way, they are 99%. This is already a scam case. Okay, so how do I verify this whether a scam case? By this Jabatan Siasat Jenayah commercial, this website semakmur.rmpgov.my, you can actually key in the bank account number and you do a SEMA. It should tell you whether is there already reported case about this bank account ID. If this is not reported under here, right, you should always make your effort to report this so that it can help the next victim to protect themselves. So to get you updated about all these latest scam, this is the website rmpgov.my.scam alerts, right? So they always update about this news topic that currently happening in Malaysia. So you see the latest that are reported on the 4th of April, right? It's the package Haji Tahun 2022. So on the 31st of March, it's also Tawaran Penggeralan KWSP. So from here, right, you can see the scammer is always up to date about what is currently happening in Malaysia. So we should always keep ourselves updated about all these scam tactics. Okay, this is the last question. We have faced the network outage or attack by the hacker. The result is unable to access the internet. So I immediately shut down the computer. And after about 10 hours, I restarted the computer and resumed operation. So we want to tell you, I'm sorry, your network is already being hacked by network. By actually shutting down the server by 10 hours is actually not going to help the situation. So we're going to share with you some of the simple exercise you can do it to protect yourself. But then this is a limited function or limited what you can do about what you just discussed. Like we shared just now, you should at minimum have anti-malware, antivirus that already installed in the endpoint. When you want to install any software, please think whether the software is trusted software or this is just a tool that you're not sure where does it come from. You should always keep your device up to date. Be it this is Windows, Android, Apple, iOS, or the browser that every running inside the PC. You should always keep it up to date. Please never open a spam email if you're not sure who is the person or you have actually do not know the person actually.
If you may, just switch on your camera. Yes, thank you. Listen. Your turn. Yeah. Shall you give a signal, Ethan? Where shall we start to smile and stop?
OK， 大家准备
Otherwise, the
一
muscle
下
become strained.
Yayin, full face, full face.
准备一下，大家。
到最后啊。
Hello, guys.
好，大家1。
It's Miss Lu.
哦，算了，大家开灯。等一下，还有第2张界面呢。等一下啊，然后。
Ready, guys?
等一下。OK， 好，谢谢。
Okay, thank you very much.